The U.S. and Israel's war on Iran has reached its 12th day. President Trump has claimed that there is nothing left to attack in Iran, while Iran has vowed to step away from responding to American and Israeli strikes and start carrying out relentless attacks. We earlier caught up with former National Security Advisor to President Trump, Ambassador John Bolton, who gave us a better perspective of U.S. and Trump's current stand on the war.
Right. Well, I support regime change in Iran because I don't think there's any other way to resolve the nuclear threat that the regime poses or the terrorism threat that the regime poses. As of right now, it's very hard to know what Donald Trump's objective is. He has said in many respects regime change is the goal, but that is contradicted by other statements he's made since the attacks begun and other statements made by his senior advisors. Yesterday, the White House press secretary said the war will be over when President Trump announces that his objectives have been achieved. Well, that's great. That could mean today. That could mean a year from now. We just don't know. And that's what worries me because I do think there's a strong and compelling case that can be made for regime change, but Trump hasn't made it yet. He hasn't made it to the American people. He hasn't made it to Congress. He hasn't made it to our friends and allies. And we're risking here getting into a circumstance where we do a lot of damage to Iran, but the regime remains in place. And in a relatively short period of time, we're right back to where we started. Different countries have really taken different perspectives. But I do think that the fact that Trump didn't keep the allies informed and really didn't make the case for regime change to them either. In both the case of the Congress and the American public and foreign governments, there was no need immediately to detail what the war plans were, what the timing was. It's a question of getting them on board politically with the objectives. And I think a lot of people in Europe found out about it at whatever their time was, at 2:30 in the morning American time on Saturday a week ago when Trump announced it. 2:30 in the morning, hardly the time you announce an attack in typical circumstances, but certainly the allies were not prepared, and I think they're inhibited because they don't feel that Trump fully states what his objectives are. They don't want to get in a war where they don't know what the objectives are. Well, I think those things are possible. I think what Putin is looking to do is leverage the intelligence that it's been reported he's supplying to the Iranian government. There's reporting this morning in the United States that they're doing other things, consulting with Iran on the use of drones and so on, which obviously Russia's had considerable experience using Iranian drones against the Ukrainian forces in the war there. So I think Putin would like to leverage that advantage against Trump in Ukraine. I think that's more what's on his mind than an off-ramp, although if he could maintain Trump's belief that he and Putin are friends by providing an off-ramp in Iran, that would make Trump even more grateful to Putin, which would pose inevitably more problems for Ukraine. The initial thing they said was 4 to 5 weeks at a minimum. I think that's clear. I think it's going to need to be more than that. They seem to be very surprised that oil prices rose after the war began because of the fear that the Strait of Hormuz would close. I'm surprised that they're surprised. But it does show part of that lack of planning and forethought that could have allowed better preparation, quicker response, quicker remedy to the issue. I don't think Trump really wants to put boots on the ground. That's another thing he said he wasn't going to do. And I don't think it's necessary. I think done correctly, the effect of these attacks on the Revolutionary Guard, the Quds Force, the Basiji militia, the ballistic missile and nuclear programs, not only destroying those capabilities, which is a positive thing in and of itself, but they are shattering regime confidence that it can defend itself. In fact, they're showing just how vulnerable the regime is. And that should sow even more dissent and disagreement within the regime, which has had considerable portions of its leadership eliminated by the Israeli-U.S. strikes. And it's that kind of instability that the opposition should be exploiting, going to officers in the regular army, not the Revolutionary Guard, but the regular army, and finding some who would come over to the opposition side, who don't want to go down with the sinking ship. That's the way you claw the opposition. The opposition claws its way into the top levels of the regime, encourages disagreement and dissent, and therefore even more instability that permits the regime to collapse. That's what we should be trying to do. Well, I think there's certainly some attacks, but I think Israel and the government of Lebanon, for the first time in a long time, are cooperating together against Hezbollah. And I think if you looked at the amount of tonnage of bombs being dropped on Iran, comparing to the tonnage of bombs being dropped on Israel, U.S. bases, the Gulf Arab countries, overwhelmingly on Iran. They're the ones who are suffering the damage. I think the Iranians made a critical mistake in attacking the Gulf Arab countries, the oil-producing monarchies. I think that's driven those states closer to the U.S. and Israel. And I think that certainly Israel was prepared. That's why they're getting ready to go in perhaps to southern Lebanon sometime soon to do more damage to Hezbollah, which, since the Hamas attack of October 7, 2023, Iran's surrogate terrorist groups have been decimated, certainly Hamas and Hezbollah. There's more to do, but the balance of power really had changed in the Middle East, really changed even before the U.S.-Israel attack began. I think this is a big problem for Trump, in part because he didn't prepare the voters beforehand. If you reason with the American people and say, here's this Iranian threat, it's extremely serious. We've tried for 25 years to resolve it diplomatically. It isn't going to work. I think we can solve it by regime change. You would start out with a bigger base of support. The polls indicate that the support for this war is the lowest for any American military action since World War II. So that's not a good place to start, because typically support only goes down over time. And this, again, appears to be something Trump just simply did not think through in advance carefully enough how he would handle the domestic politics. And he's not going to be on the ballot this November. Republican members of the House and Senate are, and in many state elections, they are, I can tell you already, very nervous. They were nervous before the attack started. As gasoline prices rise, they're getting more nervous.